By 1972, the hippie dream had faded. The utopian spirit of the 60s dissolved into cynicism, political turmoil, and the cold realities of a new decade. But rock wasn't slowing down. It was mutating, expanding, and reshaping itself into something more ambitious, more theatrical, more dangerous. This was the year rock proved it could be anything. Progressive and symphonic, funky and raw, glamorous and strange, heavy and unflinching. These 15 songs capture the sound of a year when rock was reborn, and we're counting them down from 15 all the way to number 1.
Well, I'm running down a road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind.
Number 15, Eagles, Take It Easy. A song written on a flatbed truck in Winslow, Arizona, became the birth of California country rock. When Jackson Browne struggled to finish a song, his friend Glenn Frey of the Eagles stepped in. The result was Take It Easy, the Eagles' debut single in 1972. With its breezy harmonies and laid-back guitar jangle, it crystallized the California sound. The famous line, "Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona," came from Browne's real-life breakdown on the road. For the Eagles, it was the beginning of a career that would dominate the decade. For rock, it was the perfect example of how the early 70s softened the edges of the 60s into something new. Country rock cool. Number 14, Elton John, Rocket Man. A piano ballad about loneliness in space somehow spoke to everyone stuck on Earth. In 1972, Elton John rocketed into superstardom with Rocket Man. Inspired by the short story The Rocket Man by Ray Bradbury and the growing fascination with space travel, Bernie Taupin's lyrics painted a picture of isolation and alienation. Elton's soaring melody turned those feelings into something universal. Though the song is about a man floating alone in the cosmos, audiences heard themselves in it. The loneliness of modern life, the ache of distance, the dream of escape. More than a hit, Rocket Man became an anthem of solitude that defined Elton's rise into one of rock's most enduring icons.
Take all that we can take. Gambling with the
Number 13, Curtis Mayfield, Superfly. A soundtrack to the streets, raw, political, and funky enough to move the world. In 1972, Curtis Mayfield gave the world Superfly, a soundtrack that outlived the movie it was written for. Funky, gritty, and socially conscious, the title track and its parent album told stories of poverty, hustling, and survival in America's inner cities. Unlike many blaxploitation soundtracks of the era, Mayfield's songs didn't glorify drugs and crime. Instead, they carried a heavy dose of realism and moral commentary. Superfly was funky enough for the radio but sharp enough to cut deep. It showed that soul and funk could carry the weight of social issues and still make you move. Number 12, Roxy Music, Virginia Plain. With one single, Roxy Music invented a new art rock aesthetic, strange, glamorous, and futuristic. Debuting in 1972, Roxy Music's Virginia Plain was a lightning bolt of weirdness. Brian Ferry's warbling vocals, Brian Eno's synth textures, and Phil Manzanera's sharp guitar combined into something no one had heard before. Glam, art, and avant-garde collided in a track that sounded like the future. The lyrics, surreal, fragmented, name-dropping Robert E. Lee and random pop culture, only added to the mystique. Roxy Music wasn't just a band. With Virginia Plain, they announced themselves as a movement, paving the way for glam, new wave, and everything that followed. Number 11, Deep Purple, Highway Star. A car song turned into a speed metal prototype, decades ahead of its time. On stage, Deep Purple needed an opener that would blow the roof off. The answer was Highway Star. Written on a tour bus in 1971 and released on Machine Head in 1972, it was pure adrenaline. Ritchie Blackmore's guitar solo and John Lord's organ duel created one of the fastest, fiercest songs of the era. The lyrics? a tongue-in-cheek love song to a car, but the music, a precursor to speed and thrash metal. Highway Star became a concert staple, a song so powerful it still revs up crowds 50 years later. Number 10. Genesis, Supper's Ready. 25 minutes, 7 movements, surreal lyrics, prog's most ambitious epic arrived in 1972. In 1972, Genesis unveiled their masterpiece, Supper's Ready. Clocking in at over 23 minutes, it wasn't just a song. It was a journey through biblical visions, bizarre characters, and apocalyptic imagery. Peter Gabriel's theatrical vocals, Steve Hackett's guitar, and Tony Banks' keyboards created a landscape that felt more like a symphony than a rock song. The band's concerts turned it into a theatrical performance, with Gabriel dressing in costumes to act out the madness. For prog fans, Supper's Ready wasn't just music, it was a revelation of what rock could aspire to. Number 9. Black Sabbath, Snowblind. Heavy metal faced its demons head-on, and Sabbath delivered one of the darkest odes to addiction ever written. Black Sabbath had already invented heavy metal. In 1972, they deepened its shadows with Snowblind, a track from Volume 4. The song's title and lyrics openly addressed a brutally honest song about substance struggles, something most bands at the time avoided. Ozzy Osbourne's wailing vocals and Tony Iommi's crushing riffs made it both terrifying and thrilling. Fans embraced it as brutally honest, while critics recoiled. For Sabbath, it cemented their image as the band unafraid to stare into the abyss. For metal, it set a new precedent. Darkness and reality could coexist in music that still made stadiums shake. Number 8. Stevie Wonder, Superstition. A funky clavinet riff changed the sound of the 70s forever, and Stevie Wonder became unstoppable. The opening riff of Superstition is one of the most recognizable in all of music. Played on a Hohner clavinet, it gave funk a sharper, harder edge. Stevie Wonder, only in his early 20s, wrote, produced, and performed it almost entirely himself. Lyrically, it warned against blind belief, but musically, it was irresistible. The groove was so strong that even rock audiences couldn't resist. Superstition wasn't just a number, one hit. It was the moment Stevie Wonder crossed over into every corner of popular music and became one of the defining artists of the decade.
Holly came from Miami or Philly, hitchhiked her way across the USA.
Number 7. Lou Reed, Walk on the Wild Side. A song about New York's underground world somehow became a radio hit and scandalized America. After leaving the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed struck gold in the most unlikely way. Walk on the Wild Side, produced by David Bowie, was a gentle, jazzy stroll through the lives of trans women, hustlers, and misfits from Andy Warhol's factory scene. Lines so daring and explicit that radio censors were stunned, shocking parents and thrilling teenagers. Yet somehow the song still made it onto the airwaves. Its upright bass, doo-doo-doo chorus, and laid-back delivery masked its subversive core. The song became Reed's signature, proving rock could bring taboo subjects into the open and still climb the charts. Number 6. The Rolling Stones, Tumbling Dice. Recorded in a French villa with chaos and excess all around, this laid-back shuffle became pure Stones magic. Exiled from England for tax reasons, the Rolling Stones recorded Exile on Main Street in a French mansion-turned-studio. Amid drugs, debauchery, and endless jamming came Tumbling Dice. Its swampy groove, gospel-inspired backing vocals, and Keith Richards' riffing created a sound both messy and transcendent. Mick Jagger's lyrics, about a gambler who can't quit, mirrored the band's own vices. Though the recording sessions were a mess, the song became one of their most enduring hits. Proof that sometimes, out of chaos, comes brilliance.
Some cat was laying down some rock and roll, not a soul he said.
Number 5. David Bowie, Starman. With one wave of his finger on TV, Bowie's Ziggy Stardust made outsiders feel like superheroes. When David Bowie performed Starman on British television in 1972, everything changed. With orange hair, glitter, and androgynous swagger, he pointed at the camera during the line, "I had to phone someone, so I picked on you." And teenagers across the country felt chosen. The song itself, whimsical, eerie, cosmic, introduced the world to Ziggy Stardust, Bowie's alien rock star persona. For countless young fans who felt like outsiders, Starman was a lifeline. It wasn't just a song, it was a signal that weirdness could be power. Number 4, Alice Cooper, School's Out. An anthem so wild that parents panicked, teachers hated it, and kids turned it into a religion. Alice Cooper understood something few others did. Rock could be theater. School's Out was the ultimate teenage rebellion anthem, blasting through classrooms and onto the charts. With its sneering chorus and explosive riffs, it turned the universal joy of summer vacation into a rallying cry. Parents feared it, teachers despised it, but kids, they bought it in droves. On stage, Cooper smashed props, swung a sword, and brought shock rock into the mainstream. School's Out wasn't just a hit, it was a declaration of war on authority, and kids loved every second of it. Number 3, Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water. The riff was born in fire, literally, a burning casino, Frank Zappa, and one of the most immortal guitar licks ever. Few riffs in rock history are as instantly recognizable as Smoke on the Water. Written about a real fire at the Montreux Casino during a Frank Zappa concert, the song turned disaster into immortality. Ritchie Blackmore's 4-note guitar riff became the first thing millions of kids learned when they picked up a guitar. Ian Gillan's vocals and the band's pounding rhythm section gave it muscle. Released on Machine Head in 1972, it became a global anthem. Even now, half a century later, those opening notes can ignite an arena. Simplicity never sounded so powerful.
Keep me searching for a heart of gold.
Number 2, Neil Young, Heart of Gold. A lonely folk song with a harmonica solo somehow became the biggest rock hit of the year. Sometimes, the quietest songs speak the loudest. Neil Young's Heart of Gold was a gentle folk rock tune with country overtones. Yet in 1972, it became his only #1 hit in the United States. Recorded in Nashville with James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt on backing vocals, it carried a vulnerability that resonated with millions. Young himself later said the song's popularity bothered him. He worried it made him too mainstream. But for listeners, it was a moment of intimacy, a rare glimpse into the soul of one of rock's most enigmatic songwriters. Number 1, Yes, Close to the Edge. What happens when a rock band writes a song longer than most albums? Prog history is made. At the very top of our list sits Yes with Close to the Edge, the ultimate progressive rock statement of 1972. Spanning nearly 19 minutes, divided into multiple movements, it was inspired by Hermann Hesse's novel, Siddhartha. John Anderson's mystical lyrics, Steve Howe's guitar wizardry, Rick Wakeman's keyboards, and Chris Squire's bass combined into a soundscape both otherworldly and intricate. It wasn't just a song, it was a world. For prog fans, it became scripture. For skeptics, it proved rock could be as complex and ambitious as classical music. Close to the Edge wasn't just the peak of Yes, it was the peak of prog. The shape of things to come. 1972 proved rock had no boundaries. It could be long, loud, funky, strange, political, or heartbreaking. The 60s may have died, but in 1972, rock was reborn into 1,000 different forms. From prog's sprawling epics to glam's glittering visions, from funk's groove to metal's darkness, the year captured every possible face of rock. And the echoes of that transformation are still with us today, in the epic structures of modern prog bands like Dream Theater, in the dark heaviness carried on by Metallica and countless metal acts, in the funk grooves sampled in hip-hop, and in the glam-inspired personas of artists from Lady Gaga to The Killers,